At Argo, we talk a lot about what we call ephemeral apps, which are applications that assemble themselves in real time for you to do what you want to do with them. They don't exist before you ask the question, and they will probably not exist after you're done with your task. Rather than you having to do all of these micro interactions that are very much thought of beforehand, you can have things that happen in the moment. And I think that's really powerful. You don't need to program for each and everything that could happen during a conversation. And with the help of AI, it could on the fly write its own ways or filter its own data to respond better to things that during the design phase of that software we didn't know about. It's really interesting to think about the future of digital assistants there, and why would people trust your assistant? When you can ask the computer any question and it can do almost anything digitally for you, how do you know what the right questions are?
This is the conversation with Guus Baggermans, a principal designer at Argo Design. Guus has been at the forefront of designing AI products for many years now. What sets him apart is his incredible curiosity and relentless drive to look beyond the horizon. His role goes beyond creating products. He's shaping the way we interact with technology and envision the world of tomorrow. In this conversation, we discuss what awaits us with AI development and how digital products will change in the future.
So you're designing for AI,
Right.
at Argo Design. So could you explain what does it mean? What do you do?
Yeah. So at Argo Design, I'm a principal designer, and I am responsible for playing with new technologies and new tools, seeing what they do. And that's internally as well as externally focused, meaning I look at how we do our work and can be faster and better at that, as well as how we can use these technologies in products that we design for other people. And in the end, as a design and strategy agency, we look mostly at what kind of impact this has on the end user. We're not always per se really focused on why we're putting technology in from a technology's sake, but more for, does it mean something for people in the end? Is that a good idea for people to have this technology in their hands, or a bad idea? So lots of thinking about responsibility and impact.
What is the outcome of the work? What is something that we can touch and see?
Yeah, it's everything in the world is designed in some way or another. We make digital products here, so that could be applications that run on your phone, run on your computer, or they are websites, anything like that. But they could be systems for people that work at companies as much as they are systems that help you, let's say, plan a train route or whatever. So we work on anything that is digital and complex. We're trying to make that simple and powerful for people to use.
And do you feel that with AI that changes?
I think it changes a lot. So AI has brought us a lot of things over time, but most recently, there's two things that I really see that it brought us. There is, on the one side, it allows you to communicate with a computer in a very human way through language. That can be speaking or typing. It really doesn't matter which form you like. And it can also speak back. So all of a sudden, anything is open to you rather than the buttons in front of you, right? So when you have an interface, you need to look at the interface and see what you can do with it. But when you talk to a person, it doesn't work like that. And all of a sudden, you can bring anything into the conversation, not just the buttons that are offered to you in an interface, but you can talk about the weather. You can talk about your ride to work. You can talk about something you did yesterday. All of these things now become available to the computer to listen to and interpret. So that's one side of AI. And then the other side, which is kind of based on the same technology, is the ability for the computer to create new things or specific things to a situation. So not only can you not just pick from a set of buttons, it can make new buttons based on what you're talking about. And so you can ask the computer what the weather is going to be next week in Munich, but you can also ask the computer to write you a story about how it's going to feel next week in Munich when you travel there.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing. So you said that the first thing is that our interaction will change with the help of AI, because now we can interact with the computers completely differently, not through the UI that we get used to. And the other one is that the capabilities of these systems, they extend dramatically. So there are much more things that we can do with that. And this is really interesting. So how would, for example, shopping or healthcare industry would change? So what are there like examples of how things could change? Like how do you imagine our future if it's not something that we get used to, like on our phones?
So what you see a lot is that these AI applications are built in the form of assistants. And so they can help you do things. So rather than going onto a website where you need to look at, okay, so they have 10,000 items that could be for me or probably are not for me, male, female, blue clothes, socks, like all these filters and sorting mechanisms to know exactly what you need is kind of like, again, me as a user looking at the system, seeing what I can do and then figuring out how to tell it what I need. Versus when you have an assistant, you can literally tell it, let's go to the Munich example. I'm going to Munich next week. I have a formal party. It's very cold there. And here's a couple of photos of how I dress. And the computer can take all of that into account and actually give you a subset of those 10,000 clothes, 10,000 pieces of stuff you can wear, and give you a subset of that. And then you can say, okay, that's nice, but I need it to be less formal. And again, it can transform that content. And so rather than you having to do all of these micro interactions that are very much thought of beforehand, you can have things that happen in the moment. And I think that's really powerful.
Yeah, it is. And when we are talking about personal assistants, it's clear to me how shopping might change, how like when I'm planning something and I have personal assistant, it's like really similar to if I would have like a human personal assistant, right? But what about the assistants at work? And do we even need people then if AI is so smart that it can do things for us?
So for assistants at work, or AI at work in the form of an assistant, I can imagine that it becomes really powerful that you can get almost super memory while using such an assistant. So let's say you're a doctor. You can have your patient's dossier come back up, but as soon as you're talking with that patient, it can filter itself by actually what that conversation is about. Because that person right now is asking a question. I have an itchy cough. What's up with that? And AI can parse through all of that history of the patient for the last X many years and kind of see if something like that already has happened before. Or even more powerful, once you've come to like a medicine that you want to prescribe to that person, it can do really quick drug interaction tests and also see if in the past that person has used something that maybe they were oversensitive to or something like that. So in a way, it doesn't feel like current software can't do that, but the difference is that this software can do it almost automatically. We don't need to program for each and everything that could happen during a conversation. And with the help of AI, it could on the fly write its own ways or filter its own data to respond better to things that during the design phase of that software we didn't know about. I think that's really powerful.
How do you imagine, like, how else our life will change? How the life will be different for the children, for example, that are growing up right now, and they will grow up in a totally different world with AI technology around them.
Right. So right now we live in a world where we have digital applications that are pretty much like tools. So every application has the things that it can do and the things that it cannot do. Like you can use a hammer to hammer nails, but you cannot twist screws in with a hammer because that's a different tool. And so apps are like that too. You cannot, make a picture with Google Maps. Just not how it works. But I think in the future, AI will actually allow for these capabilities to be taken apart and be used by whatever that assistant is. And we're seeing it in ChatGPT already. You can put a picture in ChatGPT, it will describe you what's in that picture. then you can tell it to make a new picture with the elements it just described to you. And then, I don't know, you can ask it to do a scientific analysis of that picture that was just made, and if that's going to work out in real life. Like, there's all these capabilities are coming together in these. And I can imagine that in that actually not too far out future, things digitally not being possible will become less and less. Whereas current apps have these things they do well and things that they can't do. And I think that will become much more like little Lego blocks that can be assembled on the fly. And at Argo, we talk a lot about what we call ephemeral apps, which are applications that assemble themselves in real time for you to do what you want to do with them. They don't exist before you ask the question, and they will probably not exist after you're done with your task. I think that's very interesting. So, and if you're thinking about that, that's kind of like personalized content, right? So you can ask it to make you an application to drive somewhere with your electric car and figure out the charging situation. And for instance, right now it's really hard to figure out that charging on the way, or to say, I want never to go under 50% battery. If nobody that made that software that you're using in your car made that option available, it's almost impossible for you to do. But with an assistant, it would really not be that hard, because they can figure out what you mean and make your app on the fly.
And what is then the design of that AI would mean if it would be able to assemble everything on the fly? Like, would we even need to design anything?
I think so, because there's a Frank Gehry documentary. Frank Gehry is an architect, and right at the beginning of his documentary, he's famous. He made really famous buildings, and it's beautiful what he makes. But then at the beginning of the documentary, he says that to him, there's nothing more scary than staring at a blank piece of paper with a pen in it, because anything is possible. And so I think, rather than us trying to design an interface to do something specific with, we're now going to help you as a user, or help people that things for, realize what is actually possible, or what is a smart thing to ask. Because how would I know if I wanted to go somewhere with my car, how would I know what the best behavior is for the battery, for instance? If I can ask it anything, maybe I'm constantly asking it to do the wrong thing. And you see this right now, for instance, with iPhone charging, that they do this trick where it only starts charging in the middle of the night, so it's ready exactly when you pick it up, because that's the best behavior for your iPhone battery. Somebody else knew about that use case, did not tell us, but made it work in that way, so we take better care of our iPhones rather than plug it in at night when we go to bed and have that thing be at full charge the whole night. So when you can ask the computer any question and it can do almost anything digitally for you, how do you know what the right questions are? How do you help those users actually figure out things that are good for them, or are nice decisions? Of course, then you also get into the topic of trust, because it's easy to manipulate people if you tell them what's the good thing to do. So it's really interesting to think about the future of digital assistants there, and why would people trust your assistant? I think that's actually where we as designers will have a lot of influence. Also, because you as a designer are responsible for making people trust something, but is it trustworthy? It's interesting. Are you making a tool that actually gives wrong answers all the time? Is it okay to make that feel trustworthy? Or should you as a designer be like, well, I think we need to design it differently so people actually know to take the answer with a grain of salt?
So you're talking about the creative power of AI, that you give it a task, it will be able to figure out how to solve it for you.
Kind of, yeah. Yeah, just like if you ask a person, let's say I want to deliver a specific Dutch snack to somebody in Milano, right? I have no idea how to get started. But if somebody would ask me or my boss would tell me to figure it out, I would be able to figure it out. So I think in the case of AI, it will also be able to figure out, okay, so what do we need? We need the snack, we need the address of the person, we need transport services, and it would be able to string all these things together because they all exist on the internet. And many of the things that it's going to need on the way have ways of communicating with them. That's either through email and asking a question, which such a thing can do, or through an API, which is what computers can already do. And so technically, you could ask an artificially intelligent application right now to do something that is multiple steps, and it can figure out how to do those steps.
Yeah, I had the recent experience like that. So I was trying to calculate how much in taxes it would cost to import the car. And I asked ChatGPT about that. And what surprised me is that it was able to understand what websites it should visit to get the information. And surprisingly, it got the right websites that has that trustworthy information, not just like the article written by the CEO consultant. It was able to get that information, and it was able to understand how to calculate it, because also it's like a weak point currently for generative AI to calculate things. And what keeps surprising me, and it's not only in that experience, it consistently showing that it's starting to understand how to calculate things, how to get to the answer that is not known, and you have to perform certain abstract things to arrive to the solution.
Yeah, I think you notice it in image generation, you notice it when you're using it to improve your writing, and now you're also noticing calculation, is that AI currently isn't very powerful by itself. If you ask it a single question and let it go, it doesn't really work. But if you use this kind of ping pong mechanism, you can get it to do lots of things that you by yourself are capable of, and the system by itself is. But that sort of co-creation really gets it to do things, because you can spot a mistake and tell it to, like, I see something in there, don't you think that's different? And it can actually correct that mistake, and you get the correct answer, and you nudge it along and you get it to go somewhere. I've been using it for lots of really complex calculations, or complex in the sense that either I cannot do the mathematics, or it would take me 2 hours to enter the data in Google Sheets, and it does it in like a matter of seconds, which is super powerful. I definitely think in the future, when sort of we figure out how to not need this ping pong mechanism, you can start to ask it really, really complicated things, questions that have never been asked before. And it will be able to write you sort of a step-by-step plan of how it arrived to the answer. Also, so you can check the answer and see if that made sense, what it did. Make you a lot faster at things. For instance, how to import a car from one country to another. Nobody ever wrote an article because you came up with maybe a very uncommon use case. You figure out something where you're like, well, that's actually really cheap. Or maybe the AI even says, if you do it via this country, you will pay less taxes than if you do it directly. And who would ever know unless you figure it out through working with an AI?
Yes, it sounds also like really like a tax advisor. So right now we have these people, right? AI will be able probably in the future, not right now, to perform a human level intellectual tasks.
In this case, I would be really curious. Let's say ChatGPT is super powerful. It can do these things. But of course, the way you ask it questions is like, your answer is going to be as good as the information you give it plus the question you give it. So you can ask it a question that looks like it's going to give you a correct answer, but it's incorrect. So I think in this case, the scary bit about it is that I will be submitting my own taxes. supported by AI, but AI is not a thing that you can blame if I do anything illegal.
Exactly.
And so that's why you're like, is it really smart to figure things out through a chat assistant and then not verify it with somebody who knows or somebody who you can legally lean on at the time that it becomes a decision? So we get back to kind of like that risk reward ratio. Like, what is the risks, or what's the chance of it being wrong, and what's the impact of it being wrong? And this is very important. Maybe when you're doing that with importing a car, it's okay. But if you do it for buying a house internationally, maybe it gets a little bit closer towards being possible bankruptcy personally or something like that. Yeah.
So we are talking about that this technology will be able to perform these human level intellectual tasks, but they will not be able to take responsibility for their answers.
Right. And so I've seen some really interesting things. In the case of image generation, there are a couple of companies that in the past have sold stock photography, so photos that we can use in presentations. We pay Adobe or iStock Photo, we pay them money to use a photo in a presentation of ours. They've started to provide AI-generated imagery as well. And it's not like that's already ready, but I can tell it what I need an image of. As a designer, that's extremely powerful. If I can say, I need a house with solar panels on it, and the car in front of it needs to be this color and this type, because sometimes we need that for a presentation. So if AI can make that image for me, that's cool. But I need to make sure that I can legally use that image. And so now companies like Adobe actually have a clause in their contract that says, if this image later on, you get in legal trouble for that because the maker of that car says, hey, you stole an image from us to make this and you never got permission for that, Adobe will pay the fine. And so you see new things popping up. And of course, ChatGPT is not a specific tool. It's a general tool. It can do lots of things. So you will never be able to legally lean on them if it gave you advice, medical advice, or anything like that. But there will be companies that will provide a chatbot that will give you certain types of advice. And maybe there will be new types of contracts that say, hey, when you use this and you use the answers that come from it, you will be insured up to an amount. And so a company like TurboTax that makes tax advising software could work with AI, and they could kind of provide you with an insurance that says, if we are wrong on this, we will help you out.
Yeah, that's interesting. It creates even the different kinds of economics. So we have currently like a service economics, for example, where like people provide services, but when AI will be able to help us doing that, we'll shift more to almost responsibility economics, where people sell their responsibility.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Really interesting idea. I haven't thought about it before.
Yeah, because the example you were giving is a really nice one, but for importing a car and doing your own, but that's you yourself.
Yeah.
ChatGPT in this case is nothing more than a calculator that you typed a number on that's either right or wrong.
Exactly.
That's your responsibility. But if there was a website that was all about cross-importing cars through Europe and the rest of the world, they would know that they could make a mistake, but they have their internal risk assessment and they're like, if we're wrong in 1% of the cases, we will still make more money than we will lose. And that's how insurance companies have worked always. So technically, yes, it's kind of almost an insurance-style economy of services. At the beginning of our talk, we were talking a lot about sort of how AI assistants are these general tools that are almost faceless because they can recombine many things. But of course, as owners of those services, Google has map data. Who else? There are companies that have flight data. There are companies that have other types of data. They will not want to provide that for free to these assistants. So that's another economy I see popping up. Right now, how that works is when you're making a new website that recombines software, your website gets that data from these different places, and that's called an API through which you can fetch that data, and you have to pay for that. So if I go to one of these travel websites where I can buy cheap flight tickets, they're using APIs to communicate with all airlines, and they're paying for that. And then you as a customer, basically, when you buy a ticket from them, they use some of that money to pay all these people, and that's how they can provide the service. Now, in the future, if your assistant, your own assistant, is using those APIs, you as a user will need to pay for that. So it will kind of almost be like a pay-per-question type thing. I'm really not looking forward to that part of it. But it could be that when you ask your chatbot a question, it can say your answer will cost you between €1 and €2 based on how it goes. So that's another thing I see coming up in this kind of new internet.
All right. So that's very interesting things that we have discussed today, like how AI will change our interaction with the digital world, how it will probably change the economy, how it will change our jobs.
I think what's important is it will change your jobs, but not remove them. I don't think we'll all be out of a job. And if we are, let's please all sit on a beach with cocktails and be out of a job happily. But no, I don't think that will happen. I think people will be able to do things that they currently can't do that well. Either they never had the time to study something, or it's not in their fingers. Don't ask me to draw nice things I can't, but I can make great images using AI, and so I can tell my story better. And so I think in that way, it will influence a lot of jobs, give people a lot more capabilities that they usually have. And in my eyes, that should just make the quality of our work better.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much for the conversation.
Thank you.